Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Welcome to everybody for joining us today. I can see a couple of comments in the chat already. Guys, we're going to have a very interesting discussion. And of course, there's so much to talk about the conflict that's taking place right now, the Epstein files. There's much more. Everything seems to be linked with this attack on Iran. I have my own understanding and my own opinion regarding the rulership in Iran, but I've got another perspective of Brother Yusuf Ismail, and hopefully, inshallah, we'll be unpacking that today here on today's show. If you're new to the channel, please like, subscribe, and share. And also, Brother Yusuf Ismail has also got a YouTube channel uh, under under the name of the South African Debate Initiative, or SADI. So if you go to YouTube, please go and follow Brother Yusuf, who's living in South Africa currently. But nevertheless, there's so much going on. There's a ceasefire. You had Melania, whatever her name is, Trump's wife, coming out and kind of like throwing everybody else under the bus, that she's not involved with the Epstein, or she wasn't involved with the Epsteins and so forth. There's so much going on. Then you have, of course, Iran. Uh, who can we believe? For me, sitting right now in the UK, I actually believe the Iranian regime over the so-called free world regime. Okay, and plus the conflict in Palestine and of course Gaza, the settlers in the West Bank, the genocide is continuing in Palestine. Is over nearly 3 years now. There's no end to it, and of course the escalation of moving into Lebanon now. Of course, the implementation that took place in Gaza is now happening on Lebanon. And of course, calling the destruction of power plants and bridges and so forth, has Trump taken this out from the book, or the writings of the genocidal regime of Israel? Is he using the same booklet to do the same thing to the people of Iran? There's so much to unpack. Of course, Brother Yusuf, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. What a phenomenal guest we got today, Brother Yusuf Ismail, all the way from South Africa. There's so much to talk about. Brother Yusuf, I'd love to have your perspective of so many topics that I just touched on right now. And I've got another surprise for you, brothers and sisters. I'll be standing as a candidate for the Workers' Party of Britain. The Workers' Party of Britain is headed by a very well-known personality by the name of George Galloway. He is well-spoken, outspoken, I would say, also. And I'll be standing in the area of Coventry, which is Falls Hill. The city of Coventry, there's a small area called Falls Hill, and I'll be standing as a candidate for the Workers' Party of Britain. So I really appreciate your support, brothers and sisters. If you are from Coventry, if you are from Folesville, please, go for myself, tick my name, and let's see what happens, inshallah. We need to make a stand now. The Labour Party throughout years has been filled with corruption. Okay, recently, as we are actually talking right now, I don't know if you brothers and sisters are aware of these so-called Ukrainian male strippers that attacked. Have you noticed that this kind of topic has been pushed under the carpet? Of course, Keir Starmer has been accused, allegedly, of hiring male strippers, and they actually firebombed his properties. And that is going to come out soon, so stay tuned for that. But nevertheless, joining us, like I said, all the way from South Africa, my brother Yusuf. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brother Yusuf.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's good to be back with you, Brother Muhammad. It's always fantastic to be back with you, and the privilege and honor is mine to be with you, and it's good to have these programs again.
I would like to touch on this so-called ceasefire. Of course, listen, I'm not on about the ceasefire in Iran. I'm on about this so-called ceasefire in Gaza right now. Nearly 700 people have been unalived since this ceasefire. There's been images of people being burnt alive. You can go to on social media, like the apps of X or other than that. Palestinians are being lynched, literally lynched, set on fire in the West Bank. The settlers are spreading as a rash, like a cancer, going through the West Bank, destroying the homes, destroying businesses, destroying the lives of the Palestinian people. Of course, uh, there's that so-called ceasefire, and now, of course, as we know, we're watching the news with the conflict, Iran versus USA and the Zionist regime of Israel. This ceasefire, will it hold? Is it holding? We're going to actually wait. But my advice to you, brothers and sisters, don't hold your breath, because I can't see this ceasefire lasting for too long. And of course, the tweets, these so-called tweets that Trump has been posting on X regarding the total annihilation of civilization in Iran, destroying bridges, power plants, destroying all the energy facilities in Iran. Is this a war crime? Where is where are these so-called anti-war or anti-conflict protesters? Where are they? Where are these organizations who many years ago we would witness marching through the streets of London saying no war, no conflict, and so forth? Where are these people now? Where are they? And of course, the war with Russia and Ukraine, it still continues. Okay, do you remember when Trump actually sat in the White House? He mentioned that he will end the conflict between Russia and Ukraine within hours. Within hours, it'll come to an end. And also, his policy was that he will not start any more wars in the Middle East. And look where we are now. Was he duped into by the Zionist regime of Israel to start this war? Was he so stupid enough? They tried it with Biden, they tried it with Clinton, they tried it with Camilla, but they never succumbed to the Zionist plan. But is Trump so stupid to fall for the trap?
Yeah.
Brother Yusuf, go ahead.
Yeah, let me start. Firstly, I think from what I can get, and I've supported Iran, the Iranian people, against this evil, satanic Epstein class. I think we have to. Iran did nothing wrong. They were completely on the right. They were fully in terms of what they did was totally correct. And I think we needed to basically support them in terms of their specific resistance. This is a situation. The Trump ceasefire wasn't a victory for the United States. The end goal of Trump was not achieved. It was never achieved. Trump didn't achieve the aims. Iran did say that it would not open the Straits of Hormuz until it was certain that there would not be a renewed attack. And after they prepared for the next round, they wanted a robust final settlement. All Iran had to do to win was, in fact, not lose, which they didn't lose. There's an argument to be made that Iran, in fact, totally won. China, on the other hand, which is heavily dependent on international trade and oil from the Gulf states, certainly exerted a degree of pressure on them. And the problem in this particular situation is that if there are military type conflicts, that basically exist, which are manipulated due to personalized agenda, at the end of the day, the individuals who win are those who are most moderate and those who are basically most genuine in their specific positions. I think it's quite clear that from all of this, Trump will basically be leaving totally and utterly humiliated. You made the point about Donald Trump over the past couple of days. He's looking extremely unhinged. He looks wasted. During the holiest time of the Christian calendar, Easter weekend, more than a week ago, or at least a week ago, Trump was busy tweeting F-bombs, and he was talking about wiping out entire civilizations all at once. For someone who believes that whites are being massacred in South Africa, which is a total lie, this is not unsurprising. And so, like a spoiled brat, he was demanding that the Strait of Hormuz be opened or the dragon fire will come. But after that, effectively, that fizzled out like a damn squib about a week ago. He then claimed victory. He had to claim victory because it's quite clear that he lost the plot. And just across the border, Beirut was being carpet bombed by the illegitimate child of the United States, Israel. Right now, as we talk, Mohammed, 1.1 million people have been displaced within Lebanon. That accounts for approximately 20% of the population. On one of the deadliest days this week, on April 8th, there was something like about 250 people killed in a single day of strikes, with a total number of civilians slaughtered as of today sitting at about 2,000. There are 2,000 Lebanese that are slaughtered. 2,000. So what do we say about that? Where is the outrage? Where is the outrage? Where is the outrage? This is the bullshit that we deal with. This is the entire bullshit scenario that we are faced with this kind of behavior, where basically 2,000 people can be slaughtered, 250 people can be murdered by Israel, and nothing happens. And so what happened yesterday when he walked away from this chaos that he had unleashed? Trump, he started attacking his own supporters. He started attacking Tucker Carlson. He started attacking Candace Owens. He started attacking Alex Jones and Megyn Kelly. These were people who got him elected. These were people who supported him initially, both in 2017 and now in 2022. They were the original and most avid alternative media supporters. He attacked them as being garbage, as having low IQs. And so there's no honor amongst thieves at this particular point. Pete Hegseth, he's Secretary of War. This bastard is a sexual abuser. You know that, Mama? Did you know that he's got a history of sexual assault? He's got a history of alcohol abuse. He's got a history of public misconduct. He was grilled in the past by senators about his behavior, including his excessive drinking, his extramarital affairs, the allegations of sexual assault. These are the shady characters making up the Trump regime. This is basically what we are effectively dealing with. This is what we are dealing with. This is the problem we have. And you know what he did in a strip club? Pete Hegseth wanted to rape a stripper. Do people know this? This is a scum, scoundrel, and filth that is making up this administration that basically is going insane. This is an insane lot. They're evil people. They are white supremacists in positions of power. And I don't think anyone now would have the courage. You know, when we started this program some years back, we had these whites coming on this program, these white Christian fanatics like Chris and a couple of others. I don't even know their names. They won't come now and challenge us. Why not? Because we've been vindicated all these particular years. We've been vindicated completely all these years. This is the problem. You see, if the Bush, if you look at the height of the warmongering, more politically powerful and the more militarily powerful Bush administration 23 years ago. The Bush administration, by the way, was more militarily powerful. This Trump administration has been depleted. The Bush administration was more military powerful. But beyond that, there was a structured and intellectual ideological framework that was basically led by think tanks such as the Project for the New American Century, which basically provided a kind of a ready-made neoconservative lucidity that heavily influenced foreign policy post 9/11. So if the Bush show was run by conspiratorial ideologues, this Trump administration is being run by insane and by an overweight, pathetic, bastard man-child surrounded by insane yes men that will basically blow up their entire country if they find it transactional. I mean, if it was transactional towards him, Trump would even allow someone to have raped his own mother. That's the type of people we're dealing with. Pete Hegseth would sell his own daughter as a prostitute to the highest bidder. Marco Rubio will sell his entire family in Cuba to become slaves for a slave trader. These are 6 psychotic people that are running the show. And right now, the United States is being controlled by the illegitimate bastard child known as Israel. that is steering American policy. Israel has now completed its total descent into fascism. I'll give you an example. We'll go into it shortly. That they've also passed in the end of March what is described as the genocide law, the penal bill, the amendment, the death penalty for terrorists, where Palestinians can be murdered and the death penalty can be imposed on them, but Israelis cannot be executed. Those Palestinians kept under administrative detention by Israel can easily be slaughtered. They can be butchered by the Israelis because of this legal position, this apartheid law, which is only applying to Palestinians. During the heights of apartheid, even whites were executed in South Africa. During the heights of apartheid, whites were executed in South Africa. Of course, they were executed disproportionately, but the point is that in Israel now, you've got a bill which has been passed by the Knesset just at the end of March that states that Palestinians can now be executed. The death penalty can now be imposed on them. This is a sick, satanic regimes that we are dealing with. This is the Epstein class that we are basically looking at. And so I want to bring your attention to something that effectively was covered by the New York Times. This is in the New York Times this week. If you can check the New York Times, Mohammed, if you can share this. I've just shared this here. Yeah, this is it here. This is devastating. This is an article in the New York Times, and it is shocking. It is shocking. Let's just see. Let's go through this. So basically, a couple of weeks in February, this was written just a few days ago, but what the recordings are, that there are situation room meetings in the White House. And in one of these situation room meetings, Netanyahu was present. And what he did was that he put Netanyahu in the center and he sat at the side. Now, if you are in the head of your company, Mohammed, will you give someone else your chair? No, you won't. If you're leading your country, if you're a monarch, will you give someone else your crown? No, you won't. But here you have a situation that Trump gave Netanyahu the full control of the situation room. And this New York Times report on the 7th of April by Jonathan Swan and Maggie Haberman basically discloses what happened on February 11th leading up to the eventual war on Iran. So here it starts off with the black SUV carrying Prime Minister Netanyahu arrived just before 11 a.m. on February 11th. The Israeli leader who had been pressing for months to agree to a major assault on Iran was whisked inside. The US and Israeli officials gathered in the room. Then Netanyahu headed downstairs for the main event, a highly classified presentation on Iran for President Trump. What was his presentation? President Trump sat down, but not in his usual position. Instead, the president took a seat on one side, facing the large screens mounted on the wall. Netanyahu sat on the other side, directly opposite the president. And then appearing on the big screen was David Barnea, the director of Mossad, and Israeli military officials. And then they did a presentation for Trump. This is a guy, David Barnea, the director of Mossad. And then you had other people. There was his son-in-law was there. Steve Woodcock was there. A whole lot of individuals. J.D. Vance, who was not so much supportive of the Iranian war, was in Azerbaijan. And then the presentation that Netanyahu would basically make would effectively lead to a series of discussions that it becomes necessary for the United States to enter this war with Iran. And so this basically what happened. The Regime Change is a new book called Inside the Imperial Presidency of Donald Trump. It reveals how the deliberations inside the administration highlighted the president's instincts, his inner circles, fractures, and the way he runs the White House. And then he draws on different things. Now, here's the main issue. I want to get to the main point in terms of what happened, because basically Netanyahu was making a sale for Trump, for regime change. And he was expressing the belief that a joint Israeli mission could finally bring an end to the Islamic Republic. And they knew that was nonsense. They knew that that would not happen. Netanyahu and his team, they stated the condition. They portrayed this as a certain victory. They say Iran's ballistic missile program could be destroyed in a few weeks. That's what they told him. That never happened. The regime would be so weakened that it could not choke off the Strait of Hormuz, and the likelihood that Iran would land blows against U.S. interests in neighboring countries was assessed as minimal. We now know that the Strait of Hormuz is fully controlled by Iran. They fully control it. And the attacks on those Gulf states that have been allowing the U.S. to use its bases, to use its land as bases to attack Iran, they've been attacked. And then they pointed out the other point that Mossad's intelligence indicated that street protests inside Iran would begin again, and that this would probably lead to rebellion and riots. That never happened at all. So he presented this. And then what did Trump say? Trump says, sounds good to me. To Mr. Netanyahu, the signal a likely green light for a joint Israeli operation. So this was all happening in the Situation Room. Netanyahu was not the only one who came from the meeting with the impression that Trump had all made up his minds. The president's advisors could see that he had been deeply impressed by the promise of Netanyahu's military and intelligence services, just yet as he had been when the two men spoke before the 12-day war with Iran. And so what then happened is that they basically looked at these particular issues. So he then met with his intelligence. Trump then met with his intelligence. And they told him that this was partial. And they said the first thing. They'd broken down. They said first was a decapitation, killing the Ayatollah. Second was a crippling of Iran's capacity to project power and threaten its neighbors. Third was a popular uprising, and fourth was regime change and get a secular leader installed. These were the four objectives. The US officials told him that they assessed the first two objectives. They stated it was achievable. They assessed the third and the fourth parts of the pitch, which included the possibility of the Kurds mounting a ground invasion of Iran. They stated that was detached from reality. And then when Trump joined the meeting, Ratcliffe briefed him on his assessment. This is a CIA director, and he used one word to describe the Israeli prime minister's regime change scenario. He said it's partial. And then what does Marco Rubio say to that? Marco, at this point, Mr. Rubio cut in. In other words, it's bullshit, he said. Ratcliffe added that given the unpredictability of events, regime change could happen, but it should not be considered an achievable object. Several also jumped in, expressing strong skepticism about the prospect of regime change. And then the president turned to his general. He said, General, what do you think? He says, this is my experience, standard operating. They oversell and their plans are always not well developed. They know they need us, and that's why they're hard selling. Regime change, he said, would be their problem. It was unclear whether he was referring to the Israelis or the Iranian people, but the bottom line was that his decision on whether to go to war against Iran would not hinge on parts 3 and 4 of Netanyahu's achievable. But then Trump appeared to remain very interested in accomplishing part 1 and 2, killing the Ayatollah and Iran's top leaders and dismantling the Iranian military. They've killed the Ayatollah. They've killed a couple of Iran's top leaders. The Iranian military is stronger, and now they're basically getting millions via ships that are passing through the Strait of Hormuz. So effectively, Trump then never ended up achieving what he wanted to achieve. These are the lies that we are basically being told. So this is something covered in the New York Times, which was what happened in the Situation Room on February. And that basically this was a push by Netanyahu and the Israelis to effectively go out and they want basic regime change. And he sold this to Trump, and this was a total lie. His own people stated that this was false. This was not going to happen. This was never going to be achievable in any given sense. And in the end now, Trump has left with his tail between his legs. Last year in June, when we spoke about the 12-day war in Iran, what was the goal? What was the goal last year? The goal last year was ensure Iran does not have the ability to get nuclear weapons. But now they then stated that they achieved that. and that Trump basically stated, in fact, if I can get an article from last year, from 2025, Trump says that Iran no longer has nuclear capabilities. This was in 2025. This was in 2025. They maintained that they had obliterated Iran's nuclear program. In fact, Al Jazeera in this year, on the 24th of February, 2026, they stated they obliterated Iran's nuclear program. Let me just show you this. I just want to show you this article here on Al Jazeera so we can see the liars and scoundrels that we are dealing with. This is the Al Jazeera report here. Have a look at this. Put this on the screen, Mohammed, and see what we've got here. They say here, U.S. research, the 2025 strikes obliterated Iran's nuclear program. The White House comments comes days after a senior Trump aide said Iran is 1 week away from having material from nuclear bomb. The White House has insisted that last year's strikes against Iran destroyed the country's nuclear program. Caroline Levitt on Tuesday, the June 2025 attack known as Operation Midnight Hammer was an overwhelmingly successful mission. The attack did in fact obliterate Iran's nuclear facilities. But then this year, Woodcock suggested that Iran is close to have enough material to build a nuclear weapon. So these are liars. These are liars that you are dealing with. Trump, in fact, said that it would take...
Brother Yusuf, there's a question here now. How reliable is New York? Is it New York reports, or I don't know? Joe Buzz, what do you mean?
Yeah, they're talking about the New York Times Post. Yeah, look, the New York Times Post, the report is reliable because number one, it is generally it's pro-Zionist. In other words, it's not going to do anything that is negative towards the United States administration. It's going to do something positive. And even if you look at the writing itself, it's written with respectful tones. What this basically shows you, it shows you this is from their own sources, that their own sources show effectively that the Netanyahu played a significant role of power play in manipulating and using and utilizing Trump in terms of his particular actions. I mean, I think the point being made from all of this, Mohammed, is that when you look, for example, in terms of national interest, is attacking Iran part of U.S. national interest? One could make the argument that it is, in a general sense, or it has been. So, for example, in the 2003 attack on Iraq, Iraq was supposed to be a stepping stone to Iran. There was a complete agreement that Iran had to go completely and utterly, and that was a case that was being made by people like Netanyahu when he was speaking to the U.S. administration. But you had two homegrown Americans there, Donald Trump and Dick Cheney, that stuck that Iraq at that point in time was of interest to them, and they went and attacked Iraq. Now, whilst the attack on Iran has been of U.S. national interest, in the case of Trump, the background is not national interest. The background is highly personalized. At this particular point in time, Donald Trump has been acting on his personalized interests. I made the point that, Trump was going, he's a scumbag, he's a narcissistic psychopath, he's a maniac, and he was going through a series of grandeur and suffering from a certain kind of excess hubris. And I'll give you an example. When he attacked Venezuela and you saw the success, I don't know how successful that was, of taking out Maduro, that emboldened him to believe, as Netanyahu lied to him and misled him, that this attack on Iran would be a walk in the park. But having attacked Iran and having seen the response and having seen the choking of the Strait of Hormuz, it's quite clear that Trump has basically lost, because the objectives that he sought to achieve have never been achieved. Iran is more economically and strategically powerful now than it was before the war. They may have, of course, lost military. They would have lost the heads of the leaders. That's fine. But the ideological rubric of the regime still remains and exists. They still back Hezbollah. They still have the support of the Houthis, and they support the Houthis. And the regime hasn't changed. And they are now in talks with China, because China was instrumental in brokering this US so-called ceasefire deal. But Iran has made it clear that if the attacks on Lebanon do not stop, they will not open up the Strait of Hormuz. And they're stuck to their guns, and the United States can do nothing. The Straits of Hormuz are closed. And the reality now is that Iran will be in a position, possibly, that they may end up developing nuclear weapons. You know, Ayatollah Khamenei passed a fatwa some years back, I think in the mid-2000s, that Iran, from an Islamic point of view, should not develop weapons which could lead to this kind of mass sanguinary destruction of the whole of humanity, because it's against Islamic ethos and Islamic paradigm and Islamic ethics to go and destroy the whole of humanity. So this is intrinsic in Islamic belief. You don't kill everybody. So that was a fatwa that was passed. Having passed that, despite that, for decades upon decades, Netanyahu maintained that Iran had nuclear weapons. I don't know if you've seen that. For decades upon decades, Netanyahu maintained the point that Iran had nuclear weapons. Now, the reality of the situation is that Netanyahu was lying. Let me just give you an example from 1995. Right from 1995, there were like something like repeated 30 years of warnings that Iran was going to basically pursue nuclear weapons, which is a total lie. I'm going to play this here and basically give this, and then I'll just share this slide with you. So let me just share the slide as an example, just to give you one example of what we're dealing with here. These liars, this Epstein class that effectively has been lying for the past 25 years. Have you got that on the screen? Is it there? Here we are. So this is Netanyahu speaks. This is June 2025. To see how far back this goes.
If not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year. It could be within a few months.
They have the wherewithal, the stored up, preserved knowledge to make a bomb very quickly if they wanted to do it.
Iran is so dangerous. Weeks away from having the fissile material for an entire arsenal of nuclear bombs.
They're very close. They're 6 months away from being about 90% of having the enriched uranium for an atom bomb.
Iran is gearing up to have
2006.
25
it's
bombs,
2006.
atomic bombs a year, 250 bombs in a decade.
Ladies and gentlemen, time is running
1996. 1996.
out.
Iran will be capable
1995.
of producing alone, without importing anything, nuclear bombs within 3 to 5 years.
If not stopped, Iran could.
What does this tell you, Mohammed? This tells you that it's like the old classic story of Wolf. And now eventually Iran may possibly develop a nuclear weapon after what happened. They would be foolish and stupid not to. They would be foolish and totally stupid not to develop these weapons by virtue of the fact that they've now got nothing to lose. They've basically been placed on the edge. They have not attacked any country whatsoever. They haven't invaded any country. They haven't caused havoc in the Middle East the way Israel is basically doing. And now, effectively, what's basically happening is the reality of the situation showing us that that Trump was totally outplayed, outmaneuvered, and he was effectively deluded. He was deluded by the Israelis. The Israelis deluded him completely. And they knew too well. They knew completely and utterly that what they were doing, and they used him. They used him as a basis for basically their own benefits, hoping that they fulfill the mandate of leading to total chaos and anarchy. I mean, you look at the irony of all of this. Donald Trump, look at the irony. He labeled an old, disabled 86-year-old man, Khamenei, who, by the way, he had no direct influence in policy. He was not making policies there. I mean, his role was far more symbolic. But they labeled this old 86-year-old man as one of the most evil in history. That rings hollow, particularly in the light of the Epstein files, which reveal this kind of pedophile class and the members behind this lot of individuals engage in the most vicious kind of war crimes in modern history. There was a movie made in 1997 called Wag the Dog. It's where a spin doctor, De Niro, who acts as him, and a Hollywood producer, Dustin Hoffman, they fabricate a fake war with Albania to distract the public from a presidential sex scandal before the election. The difference today is that the reality is far more darker, because you actually do have forms of activity involving a president implicated in a massive and infinitesimally larger child sex and child trafficking scandal in documents, 80% of which still have to be released, and a real war in which 86 school children at the beginning of the Iranian conflict, and now you're looking at, probably close to 10,000 Iranian civilians, even more, have been killed, have been slaughtered by the US military. They've been totally slaughtered by the United States military. I made the point that Article Chapter 2.4 of the UN Charter prohibits the use of force against territorial integrity or political independence of any state. So preemptive self-defense is just not allowed in the given circumstances with Iran. And yet that's exactly what Rubio said. Do you remember what Rubio said, Mohammed? Rubio gave his reasons as to why they went to attack Iran. Do you remember what he said? He said it's because they were anticipating a preemptive strike after Israel attacked it. So they say why they attacked Iran. Let me just give you that clip. And then he backtracked on it. Here we are. Let me share this. This is what they're doing and how we are. This is why this is the reason he says the US attacked Iran. The reasons change all the time. Here we are.
Second question that's been asked is, why now? Well, there's two reasons why now. The first is it was abundantly clear that if Iran came under attack by anyone, the United States or Israel or anyone, they were going to respond against the United States. And in fact, it bear to be true, because in fact, within an hour of the initial attack on the leadership compound, the missile forces in the south and in the north, for that matter, had already been activated to launch. In fact, those had already been pre-positioned. The third is the assessment that was made that if we stood and waited for that attack to come first before we hit them, we would suffer much higher casualties. And so the president made the very wise decision. We knew that there was going to be an Israeli action. We knew that that would precipitate an attack against American forces. And we knew that if we didn't preemptively go after them before they launched those attacks, we would suffer higher casualties and perhaps even higher those killed. And then we would all be here answering questions about why we knew that and didn't act.
Can you see that? So this is the reason. Now he's talking about a preemptive strike because they knew Israel was going to attack Iran. And if they did nothing, the Iran would attack them or their bases, and therefore they had to engage in a preemptive strike. Look at these lies. Look at these lies. And then he changes it. And then he basically changes it. So these people are total liars in what they do, in what they say, in what they engage in. And I think none of them can basically be trusted. They cannot be trusted to do what they say. And then in the meantime, what's basically happening is your oil prices are increasing tenfold. I'll give you an example. I don't know how much petrol is or diesel is in the United Kingdom. In South Africa, diesel is not regulated. Petrol is, of course, is regulated. But our petrol prices are going to basically be skyrocketing because of what transpired. I mean, there's going to be a skyrocketing of, by virtue of the fact that this attack on Iran caused by Bush basically would lead to a grotesque financial depression and real concern. Now, it may stop by virtue of the fact that there's a kind of a ceasefire, but the point is that our prices, the global oil, the natural gas prices, have still been soaring since this war commenced, since Israel bombed a natural gas reserve in Iran. And then, of course, basically leading a situation to Iran to strangulate the Strait of Hormuz. And they were fully entitled to do that. The Strait of Hormuz, it's a choke point. There's an average of about 20 million barrels per day that ship through. The choke is an area during which, if it's shut, you end up getting a shock stop of the flow of global trade. 30% of the global oil flows through that. And part of the reason for that is that the world's biggest oil producers, some of the biggest oil producers, are sitting all around the Persian, Arabian Gulf. And this brings me to the issue of the petrodollar system. The petrodollar system, this is a global arrangement where your oil exporting countries, they price and sell their crude oil in United States dollars. All the Gulf states have to sell their oil in dollars to the United States and globally. And the dollars they receive, the dollars that Saudi Arabia receives, that the UAE receives, is then invested back into the US economy by these states. That's why you've got the Paramount production, which is taken over by the Ellison family, Larry Ellison, the Zionist Jew. The Saudis invest in that as well. This is nothing more than a mafia enterprise. So the background to this entire system is that that system was established in 1970. I want people to know this. Check up the petrodollar system online. If you have a problem reading it, then go on to YouTube and check up what is the petrodollar system. The petrodollar system, it's a cornerstone of global finance. It was established in the 1970s, and it basically ensured a worldwide demand for the dollar. The fundamental basis of US imperialism since the Second World War has been, on the one hand, petroleum, and on the other hand, it's been the US dollar. So the globe's production at this point, the world is dependent on petroleum, which the US has controlled, and which, until the nationalization of the oil in the 70s and 80s, basically they controlled something like 60% of the world's oil reserves. What happened in the 70s was that there was an agreement that we're going to give you protection. We'll give you protection, but you have to now sell to us your oil in dollars. And not only that, you have to sell to anybody else in dollars. So, for example, when we purchase oil, South Africa, we purchase oil in dollars. Obviously, we are paying in rands, but the equivalent is we are paying in dollars. What then happens is a heavy importer of dollar-dominated oil. That system drives up local inflation. It raises interest rates. It shuts down economic growth. What then happens is, because oil is priced in US dollars, in the South African context, you've got a weakening rand against the dollar. It makes imports more expensive, and it directly increases petrol and diesel prices. So we rely on the petrodollar system, primarily because we are net importers of petroleum products. And those petroleum products are priced and traded globally only in US dollars. So that reliance makes the South African economy vulnerable to the strength of the dollar and the ebb and flow and fluctuation in oil prices. So high oil prices, it drives up transportation, it drives up logistics, and it drives up food costs. I'll give you one example. In 1970, during the apartheid era, the exchange rate for the British pound to the South African rand was approximately 1 pound is 1 rand 71 cents. 1 pound is 1 rand 71 cents. Today, 1 pound is the equivalent of 22 rands. 22 rands. A loaf of bread costs 20 rands in South Africa. A bottle of milk costs 25 rands in South Africa. I mean, to think about it, if you were to talk about a 1 pound, how expensive would it be if a loaf of bread were to cost 20 pounds in Britain, or a liter of milk cost 25 pounds in the UK? Think about it for a moment. If you look at the 1960s and the 1970s, the rand had a massive value against a pound, and it also had a massive value against the dollar. So, for example, in the 1980s, the South African rand was stronger than the US dollar until about 1982. During that period, the rand was worth so for 1 rand, you could get $1.40. In fact, I think even $2. $2 was worth 1 rand. That's how powerful it is. The rand reached its strongest level in the early 80s. Today, the South African rand is equivalent to 15 US dollars. So I'm sorry. The $1 is equivalent to 15 South African rands. So to get $1, I have to pay 15 rands. To get 1 pound, I have to pay 22 rands. So we have been reduced to beggary. So the fact that Iran, which we need to back and support strategically at the very least, is actually looking for alternatives to the dollar in order to challenge the petrodollar regime, which none of the other Arab Gulf states are doing. None of them. They're sitting back and they're doing nothing. I mean, they were complaining, the UAE and so on, about the bombings of their bases. Iran made it clear. Why are you using your land and your area for the US to have as bases and launch strikes from there, which they did? So if the Iran is looking for alternatives to the dollar, which is one of the fundamentals of US empire, then that's something we should support to lead to a potentially new world order post this illegal war, where there's a multipolar financial system, where, for example, the dollar is no longer a single currency that rules the world. And I made this point, I write in some of our local papers, that South Africa needs to hit back. South Africa needs to buy oil and refined petroleum, no longer in US dollars, but in other currencies. We need to look at alternatives. And I think it's at least beneficial for the minimum time, although it's going to have an impact on us, that Iran does in fact ensure that the United States and the UK and their supporters don't get through the Strait of Hormuz, and ensure that they strangulate the entire area. They are more strategically powerful today than they were before this particular war. And all that you see here is chaos. And all that you see, the only people who suffer are children, women and children and civilians and men who are being destroyed, who are being pounded. Look at what's happening in Lebanon now. Lebanon, I've seen the footages and the images coming from Lebanon. They want to destroy Lebanon. They are killing them on a similar scale as what's been happening in Gaza. Totally destroying them. Totally destroying them. So in the given situation, Trump has now walked away like a dog with a tail between his legs. Netanyahu is obviously disappointed because they didn't want the ceasefire, and they are upset with Trump. But Trump knows that the more and more he goes into this war, he's going to be militarily depleted. He's going to be embarrassed. They haven't achieved their aims. And mark my words, it is unlikely, and I may be proven wrong, but it is unlikely that Trump is going to go back to Iran. It's going to be passing by, just like Greenland. Nobody talks about Greenland now. Nobody's talking about Canada now. But it's unlikely that Trump is basically going to go back to Iran. It'll be too costly for him. His credibility is already destroyed. He was having a big talk. You saw his tweet. Where was his tweet? Let me just show his tweet. That massive tweet that he had. What was he talking about? The tweet last week. Trump tweet Iran. The infamous tweet. Where was it tweet? Yeah, this is a sign of a man who is desperate. Yeah, here we are. Here's one of the tweets. Let me just try and open this here. This was a tweet that he had. Let me just get this here. This was on Saturday last week. We are now Saturday, a week earlier, a week later. If you can open it up here, open up. This is what he's saying. If you check if it's on StreamYard there, this is what he's saying. This is Tuesday. This is on Saturday. This is how unhinged the man is. Trump will be power plant day and bridge day all wrapped up in one in Iran. There'll be nothing like it. Open the effing straight, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. This guy is deranged. Just watch. Praise be to Allah, President Donald J. Trump. This guy is unhinged. He is wasted. He's lost the plot. He's desperate. He knows this is a man that is desperate. You know, when you throw your toys out of the cot and you can't have what you want, you totally destroy. This was on Saturday. When was it? Yeah, this was on Saturday last week. I think 5th of April. Yeah, this was on the 5th of April. What was the date? That was 5th of April. Yeah, 5th of April was a couple of days. I can't seem to put my stuff on. Yeah, 5th of April was last week Saturday, right? Yeah, last week Saturday. Then
there's a question there for you, Brother Yusuf, from Joe Baz again. Would you debate pre-war? Is it pre-war Iranian?
Pro-war.
Pro, okay.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, I would. Bring them on. I would love nothing more than to be on Piers Morgan. I mean, obviously, Piers has his set of individuals. And of course, the way it works with the algorithms, if you've got a massive social media account, he gets good guys. He does get good presenters, but a lot of them are also on massively streamers, and so that's how they get the popularity. So he links up with them. But I'd have nothing. I'd more than be willing to debate any pro-war Iranian. Set it up. You can have Muhammad coming, and we can most definitely do that. But that was the first tweet. And then the second tweet was here. Yeah, then there was one before that. If Iran doesn't fully open up within 48 hours, the United States will hit and obliterate the various power plants, starting with the biggest one first. Thank you for your attention to this matter. That never happened, clearly. And then it was this year, Trump tweet. This was the one that where he was promoting genocide. Let me just go to this tweet here. Yeah, here we are. This was on X. So I just want to try and maybe this was Trump's. Let me just make it as bold as possible. So I'm just going to try and see this. This was probably what a lot of you have seen. This is a screen that I want you to share. This is a tweet. Here we are. Yeah, if you can share this, Mohammed. Here we are. So this is what he tweeted then on, when was it? I think on Sunday. It was on Sunday. He says there a whole civilization will die tonight. That's at 8 p.m. It was leading up to Monday night, April 7th. Never to be brought. I don't want that to happen, but it probably would. However, now that we have complete and total regime change, I mean, the guy is out of his mind. There's no regime change. If you kill a leader or kill the symbolic leader, there's no regime change. Where different, smarter, and less radicalized minds prevail. In fact, they're far more radicalized than what Khamenei is. Now, those individuals there want a nuclear bomb to be developed. Maybe something revolutionary, wonderful can happen. Who knows? We will find out tonight, one of the most important moments in the long and complex history of the world. 47 years of extortion, corruption, and death will finally end. God bless the people of Iran. So on the one hand, you say, God bless the people of Iran. And on the other hand, at the beginning, you say, the whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I mean, the guy is mentally disturbed. This is a sick psychopath. Sick, sadistic psychopath. And of course, I knew when I saw it that the guy is unhinged. He's mentally deranged. He's not talking or thinking straight. And it obviously never happened because the Iran called his bluff. Iran called his bluff, and the next day he says, we had a ceasefire, and he's now saying he won the war. What is this guy talking about? This man is a joker. He's a skunk. He's a scoundrel. He's basically self-interested, self-serving, narcissistic, maniac, lunatic, and he's surrounded by yes men. I mean, none of them are intellectuals. None of them. None of them. None of the people in the Trump administration. These are lunatics. At least in the Bush administration, the one thing which you can't fault them with is that they had intellectual ideologues who were evil, by the way, but they had intellectual ideologues running the show. Obviously not Bush himself couldn't tie his shoelaces. If Bush couldn't tie his shoelaces, Trump can't pull up his underwear. So Trump is obviously worse, but Bush at least had a support structure of highly disturbed but intellectually savvy individuals. You had people like Richard Pearl. You had Paul Wolfowitz. Wolfowitz was a deputy defense secretary, not even the defense secretary. You had Donald Rumsfeld. You had Dick Cheney. You had the ideologue, was a former national security advisor, but was very instrumental in being the brains behind the Bush administration. Zbigniew Brzezinski, who wrote the book, The Grand Chessboard. I think the rise of the tectonic age. You had people who founded the document called the Project for the New American Century. You had the American Enterprise Institute. So the one thing, and then of course you had a powerful military, because the military that the Bush administration had, they weren't drained as this administration is right now, which is not militarily powerful. And I can tell you clearly, and Trump knew, that if troops entered Iran, it would be a second Vietnam for them. They wouldn't have been able to sustain it. They were mountainous regions. They would have been totally and utterly humiliated. Utterly humiliated. This was not Iraq, which was in a very poor stage. It had a decade of sanctions. Saddam Hussein had totally depleted the country. This is not Afghanistan, which was very poor, rustic, and the people were basically in poverty. And even in those regions, they were humiliated after 20 years. Iraq, you had a situation of the rise of ISIS. Afghanistan, they removed the Taliban, only to have the Taliban take over 20 years later. But Iran was a different kettle of fish. And they would have totally humiliated and destroyed themselves had ground troops entered Iran. He knew he couldn't risk that. But he followed Netanyahu's lead, bombed the country, killed the Khamenei, who was dying in an event. He had cancer. He was going to die in an event. And Iran now is more strategically powerful. Yes, they may have destroyed some military structures. The enriched uranium is still there, which they purportedly claim. What was the purpose? Because if your purpose was nuclear weapons, Trump had already said in July last year that we've destroyed the nuclear weapons. They won't be able to basically re-engage for decades to come. So then they had to come up with something else, regime change. But now regime never changed. But so what is he claiming? You see what I'm saying, Mohammed, is that these people are unhinged. And it's good in a way, because the fact is, Trump is basically, there's a saying that when your enemy makes mistakes, I think it was The Art of War by Shang Tzu, in The Art of War, when your enemy makes mistakes, don't stop him. Let him make mistakes. And this is exactly what Trump is happening. He's talking about genocide on the one hand. He's talking about having achieved regime change. So if you've achieved regime change, look at the contradiction here. If you've achieved regime change, we have a complete and total regime change, then what's the purpose of talking about genocide? Well, what's your aim? And then if you're talking about genocide and destroying the whole of Iran, how are you blessing the great people of Iran? Can you see how mentally deranged? Who writes this, Mohammed? Does a president of a nation, if someone were to write this tweet and he's running your company, this bastard is running your company, you've got a business, and your company is being run by a person who does this and tweets about your company, what will you say? Will you keep him on? Will you keep him on?
He's absolutely crazy, brother Yusuf.
This is the insanity we are dealing with. That's why I made the point that if the Bush administration was run by conspiratorial and intellectual, albeit intellectual ideologues, the Trump administration is run by a total insanity. It's run by child abusers. It's run by people engaged in rituals, in ritualistic killings. There's a whole lot of things happening. I was reading something about the Epstein files recently, and there was something about the Epstein files which mentions about ritualistic sex abuse. That there was literally allegations in the diaries of ritualistic sexual abuse, satanic sex abuse. Because, for example, when you look, we discussed the Epstein files. There was a lawsuit that was filed in 2026 on behalf of a victim, and she was making the allegation that when she went to Epstein's private island, through what she believed was a sinister kind of happenings going on, the attorney for the victim claimed that prior to the sexual acts, there was occult activities taking place. And then there were claims by some of these victims of ritualistic sacrifices, cannibalism, infanticide, satanic ritual abuse, sexual slavery. I don't know if you saw that Stanley Kubrick movie. Did you watch that Stanley Kubrick movie on Tom Cruise? What was it called? Eyes Wide Shut. Did you see that? Did you see that?
No, I haven't seen that.
You've never seen that scene? There's a scene which, there's a scene which I just wanna see if I can get it there. It's let me get the adverts out here. But there's a scene where it's actually starring Tom Cruise. By the way, Tom Cruise is heavily involved in occult himself. He's with the Church of Scientology. But I want to play this. This is about 2 minutes. It's obviously YouTube censors the whole thing. But, when I looked at the scene and I read about some of the things that's going on in the Epstein file, this is, by the way, a mainstream Hollywood production. And the director, Stanley Kubrick, actually died under mysterious circumstances after he showed the full clip. It was edited by I think, Paramount Productions. They released it, but they released the edited version of it. Now, this is one scene which was recorded. And by the way, the place where the scene was recorded was taking place in the Rothschild Mansion in the United Kingdom. This is in the United Kingdom, by the way. The scene, by the way, was filmed in the United Kingdom. I think the house is one of those major mansions where the Rothschilds family basically resided. I'll get to that. I'll get to the name, Walthamshire or somewhere on not too far from you. But I want you to look at the scene. And this is basically what some of the victims were alleging was happening at Epstein Island when they talk about satanic ritualistic belief, actions that were taking place. When I first saw this many, many years ago, when I when I kind of was skipping through the movie, and I've watched the whole thing, but I watched particularly this scene, it filled me with a sense of dread. The music, the scene, the setting, the atmosphere, everything. And I want you to look at it, and then you look at the Epstein files and tell me if this was not a mirror that Hollywood is basically telling us, or Kubrick was telling us, this is actually what is happening amongst elitist circles. So I'm going to share this with you. It's available on YouTube, so they censor out the more gory details. But this is it here. It's called the Eyes Wide Shut ritual. Have you got it on your screen? I'm going to expand this. And then just sit back, and it's about 2 minutes. Just sit back and watch. This is Tom Cruise, by the way. And this is how the scene plays out. You tell me if this is not what is going on by the sick, satanic elitists running the show. Here we are.
Please, come forward.
So that's basically, do you know what this movie was about? What the hidden undertone was this about? Those people around in masks, if you watch the entire movie, they're teenage girls. And the ritual was basically about preparing them for this kind of ritualistic sex abuse. So the entire movie, if you watch it, it's about this cult, elitist cult at the highest level, politicians, leaders, and so on, engaging in satanic acts and ritualistic child abuse of teenage girls. I don't know how you find that the sound, the stream itself, extremely disturbing. Muhammad, what's your take on that?
Yeah, the audio, the visuals are very, very creepy.
Disturbing. That is absolutely disturbing. So he died after this. After releasing this, he died. They say it was a suicide or something happened to him, but I don't know. But basically, this is about ritualistic abuse. And this is, in a way, shows us a kind of a mirror, an entry level to this kind of satanic evil that these particular people are engaging in. I think one of the points, and I've made this a point in my article that I wrote for one of the local papers, is that is it so disturbing, or is it so out of the ordinary to possibly believe that we are effectively being run by individuals who are secretly pedophiles and cannibals? Is that so difficult to believe? I mean, the reality of the situation is that, and this is the whole point that I was making about the Epstein saga, because we're dealing with the Epstein issue again, Iran, is that the Epstein saga should never be seen as an exception to the norm about child sex abuse amongst the powerful and the elite. It is the norm. It is, in fact, the norm. When the US Representative Ted Lieu, by the way, he cited highly disturbing allegations of Trump raping children and threatening to kill children. He, in fact, referenced a witness report to the FBI's National Threats Operations Center about a girl who's now dead, who allegedly claimed that she was raped by both Trump and Epstein in a limousine. And this Representative Ted Lieu accused the Department of Justice of a cover-up by redacting significant portions of the files to shield Trump and his inner circle. And those are the people that are taking you to the war on Iran and claiming that Iran is the bad guy and they are the good guys, and claiming that Khamenei, who died as a martyr, is an evil man or one of the most evil men in history. This is the sickness and the insanity. Did you know that, Mohammed, that there were allegations that Trump and Epstein both raped an underage girl? Did you see that? Did you see the discussion that was happening in Congress about Trump raping a child? People didn't believe me when I told them. This is one of the issues that was basically made, that the Republicans are so interested in Bill and Hillary Clinton because they're trying to effectively cover up what is happening with regards to the president. I'll give you an example here. This is the example about Trump himself. This is Representative Ted Lieu. That the Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton hearing that they wanted to have was just a smokescreen, was just simply a smokescreen for what Trump himself was doing with Epstein. It was just simply a smokescreen for what Trump was doing, how he was raping and how he was apparently killing children. The talk is that he was killing. People find this odd to believe that in his individual capacity, Trump and Epstein were possibly killing children and raping them. It finds it bizarre that I'm saying this. Let me hear what an official congressman has to say. This is officially on record. I'm going to play this here for those who think I'm making this up. And this is part of a congressional record, and this is the official statement made by him. I want you to share this, Mohammed, and let people hear what Representative Ted Lieu says. Do we have it on the screen? Listen to this.
So why are Republicans so interested in Bill and Hillary Clinton? It's because they're trying to distract from the fact that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files thousands and thousands of times. In those files, there's highly disturbing allegations of Donald Trump raping children, of Donald Trump threatening to kill children. So I encourage your press to go look at these allegations. And I'm highly disturbed that Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche just got the law wrong. Yesterday, he said, essentially, that it is not a crime to party with Jeffrey Epstein. Well, that's actually not correct. If Jeffrey Epstein was human trafficking minors for these sex parties, and you show up and patronize the establishment at that party, yes, you're guilty, because patronizing is part of the law, the federal sex trafficking law. So Deputy General Todd Blanche just got that wrong, which maybe explains why they aren't investigating all these folks, including Donald Trump. He needs to read the law and investigate these people. He also needs to resign, not only for not knowing the law, but a massive, not only screw up, but the biggest privacy violation in history. They release a lot of pictures of minors unredacted, just violated the privacy of these girls. It is uncalled for what they did. The one thing that they could not do under this law was to invade the privacy of these women now, who were girls at the time, who were victims of sex trafficking. Also, he met with Ghislaine Maxwell, moved her to a minimum security prison, and then got a puppy for her. So for all those reasons, he's just got to leave the Department of Justice.
So basically, what he's saying is this is a talk that he's been accused of raping children. He's been accused, Trump has been accused of raping children in the Epstein files, of threatening to kill children. And this is basically on record, but why don't we see this kind of massive thing? I mean, this is yes. If those who don't believe me, these are the videos. If you want to see on for those who don't have the time to go into it, but I just want to share all these videos on YouTube. These are the official videos. Here's it here. Here we are. If you can just share this, all of you see that what we're dealing with here. Representative Lieu said Epstein files have allegations of Trump raping and threatening to kill children. President Trump is accused of raping children in the Epstein children. And this is a 3-hour discussion. Basically, an official, there's a congressional records. Lieu and Bondi, Trump over the Epstein files. Trump mentioned thousands of times in the Epstein files. Trump accused of raping children. NBC archive footage showing Trump partying with children. Donald Trump makes lewd joke to a group of young girls in Entertainment Tonight footage. What does he say here? I never saw this before. What does he say here?
Every IT leader knows this view. A mountain of complexity standing between you and your goal.
Okay, you start and I'm ready. In the wake of questions and allegations about Donald Trump's behavior towards women, ET discovered this footage in our archive, which we provided to CBS News.
Soon, Thursday night. You're going up the escalator? I'm going to be dating her in 10 years. Can you believe it? Okay.
So that's a young child. That's a young child.
Okay.
This is a child.
I'm going to be dating her in 10 years.
Look at that.
Thursday night.
Talking to
You're going up the escalator? I'm going to be dating her in 10 years. Can you believe it?
Can you see he's talking to a young child? This is prepubescent children. This was provided by Entertainment Tonight. And so this is basically the type of sickness that you deal with. This is a sickness that you deal with. So, Mohammed, over to you. Any thoughts from your side in terms of what we're dealing with?
Well,
in relation to the attacks on Iran.
Of course, there is a huge cover-up. The allegation of Trump getting involved in the war with Iran is a cover-up from the Epstein file. Absolutely, there's no doubt about it. Other presidents were not stupid enough to invade Iran. They thought it was going to be easy. Maybe a week, Iran would collapse. The people will uprise. But as we can see now, by over a month now, the Iranians are still fighting hard. Apparently, even on the first day, we were told all the air systems were down. The naval boats were gone. They had no air defenses. And then a couple of days ago, one of the airplanes were shot down. Other planes were shot down just to so-called rescue a particular pilot. The aspects of also, Brother Yusuf, I wanted to touch on, just moving the goalpost a bit, is regarding the killing of settlers by the Israelis. Just now, there's been a breaking news where a Muslim man has been murdered by being shot in the back by Israeli settlers in Ramallah. This is just breaking news right now. Why do you think, Yusuf, nobody's raising this up? It seems to be even the genocide in Gaza, nobody's talking about it anymore. Has the media, from all aspects of life, I'm not just on about the British media or the Western media, even the Arab media like Al Jazeera and other than that, do you think they have been compromised? I just find it quite strange, Brother Yusuf, that nobody's really talking about Lebanon, nobody's talking about West Bank, nobody's talking about Gaza. All eyes right now are on Iran. And of course, we got the peace talks taking place right now in Pakistan with various ambassadors, and Pakistan in the middle trying to negotiate something. I'd love to get your thoughts on what I just mentioned. Do you think that this is just a cover-up for Trump to distract, the aspect of the Epstein files, and of course the aspect of the genocide that is just continuing in Gaza right now? What's happened to humanity?
Yeah, let me just tell you, based on, this is what I would call, algorithm prostitution. So if I can just get my algorithm prostitution is where what is viewed as, if you look at the search results from early 2026, the situation in Gaza has not fallen by the wayside in the sense of the genocide not continuing. It is continuing in terms of severity, but its prominence in global news headlines is somewhat diminishing. So, for example, last year or the year before last, particularly, Gaza was in the news every day. But now that's diminished due to, from the media's point of view, they call it a combination of news fatigue. In other words, there's a normalization. If you look at media studies, they will tell you where the violence is so prominent and so daily, the normalization of extreme violence and the emergence of other conflicts leads to the situation being viewed as a forgotten crisis, despite humanitarian conditions being at their worst at this point in time in Gaza. So after months of intense war and high death tolls, the media now is looking at global audiences or and they see what they believe is a news fatigue, making it difficult for their ratings to boost or to maintain a high level attention to the same conflict. Because the algorithm prostitutes. Whatever's hot on the plate is something that is there. The humanitarian situation in Gaza is increasingly being described as a kind of a forgotten crisis. Even though the killings continue, even though the starvation continues, even though the aid restrictions continues. And the other point is that there's a lack of media access. Up to now, international journalists have totally limited access to Gaza. They're making it difficult. They make it difficult to report the daily reality. But there are journalists in Gaza. Al Jazeera journalists are there, and Palestinian journalists are there. So effectively, this is a situation. Despite all of this, it remains extreme. The crisis remained extreme. Destruction of infrastructure, widespread famine, and a largely displaced population continue to face significant dangers as of today. As of today, they've been pounded, but nobody's mentioning this because your attention is focused elsewhere. And I think it's got to do with the dominant, and that's why alternative stations need to talk about this all the time. That's why I take off my head, my hat to the electronic intifada and to people like Owen Jones, phenomenal journalist. I really take off my hat to him. I salute him. I salute the electronic intifada. These are well-known channels. I salute Plus 972 magazine. I mean, many people don't know, as we are talking right now, that as of the 1st of April, the death penalty will now be applied in Gaza, in the West Bank. The death penalty is now entrenched in law. You see, they're already shooting Palestinians. They're already shooting and murdering Palestinians. Under Israel's new law now, this will only be sanctimoniously sanctioned by the state. Now they will face capital punishment. And up next is a tribunal to execute those convicted of participating in the October 7th attacks. Who's been talking about that? Nobody's been talking about that. Here's a report in Plus 972 magazine. Have you heard about this? You familiar with this death penalty law, Mohammed? You are familiar with that death penalty law? A lot of people are not. A lot of people are not. This is from Plus 972 magazine. They already shoot us for no reason. Now they have the death penalty. Basically, on March 30th, the Knesset they passed a death penalty law aimed squarely at Palestinians. For the occupied West Bank, the law mandates Israeli courts to impose a death sentence on anyone convicted of killing an Israeli citizen or resident with the intent of rejecting the existence of the State of Israel, which means that in practice, only Palestinians will be targeted. Under the law, military courts can only bypass this mandate and sentence if it finds special reasons or under special circumstances. Earlier version of the bill allowed for no exceptions, but was altered after the military warned that it violated international law. But now it's been basically passed. Now it's been passed. And now they will be sent. The last person sentenced to death was Adolf Eichmann by an Israeli court. And now they will basically be, the proposed method of execution was revised to injection. Undeterred and unemboldened, Security Minister Ben-Gvir started sporting the noose-shaped lapel on meetings.
Yeah, but
so they've passed a law.
Just fat bastard, and I'm sorry calling him fat bastard, was actually holding a bottle of champagne as this law was, and he was happy. He could see, dancing.
Yes,
got his little badges on, and how come nobody's speaking about it? How come a handful of media agencies are reporting this? It seems to be, like I said, Brother Yusuf, it seems to be like a lot of these media organizations have been compromised. I do think that many years ago, particular people were put into particular positions to influence what happens and what is put on air. And unfortunately, you know, this is what really troubles me, brother Yusuf, is that there's so much fake news, okay, and there's so much truth, but the truth seems to be getting overshadowed by fake news. Okay, fine. Why isn't Israel sending their troops to fight in Iran? Why is it just the Americans? So far, apparently, there's been 13 American soldiers who have been unalived. I'm sure that is not a true figure. I'm sure there's much more than that. But, what is going on? And also, Brother Yusuf, did you put something in the bottom there?
Yeah, put it. Just share this. I want you to share this here. That's what you're talking about here. This was Ben Gvir.
This time from life to life.
That was him.
The minister on what is the celebration?
Drinking champagne.
Death to the terrorists. The death penalty for terrorists bill passed today. History. God willing soon, one by one, to bring to light all those who killed and murdered and rejoice in the life of the nation.
And this is what this was.
Israel's parliament on Monday passed a law making the death penalty the default sentence for Palestinians convicted of deadly attacks in military courts.
אני קובעת כי הצעת חוק עונש מוות למחבלים תשפ"ו 2026
השר, על מה כל החגיגה?
מוות למחבלים עבר היום, חוק מוות למחבלים, היסטוריה. בעזרת השם בקרוב, אחד להוציא להורג, כל אלה שטבחו ורצחו ושרפו.
The move fulfills a pledge by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's far-right allies. Far-right National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir promoted the measure.
From today onward, every terrorist shall know, and the whole world shall know, he who takes life, the state of Israel will take his life. This justice needs to be seen and done, and starting tomorrow morning, with the help of the blessed God, it will be done.
Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, meanwhile, condemned the legislation, saying it's a breach of international law and a doomed bid meant to intimidate Palestinians. The measure has drawn international criticism of Israel, which is already under scrutiny for increasing violence by Jewish settlers against Palestinians in the occupied West Bank. It includes provisions requiring an execution by hanging within 90 days of sentencing, with some allowance for delay, but no right to clemency. Palestinian militant groups Hamas and Islamic Jihad called on Palestinians to launch attacks in revenge for the law. Israel abolished the death penalty for murder in 1954. The only person ever executed in Israel after a civilian trial was Adolf Eichmann in 1962. Eichmann was an architect of the Nazi Holocaust. According to Amnesty International, some 54 countries around the world permit the death penalty, including a handful of democracies such as the United States and Japan.
So that's basically one. And here's he's celebrating with his son. Imagine the sickness here.
אתה יודע, השבוע העברנו את חוק עונש מוות למחבלים. זה בשבילך, זה בשביל כל הלוחמים, בשביל כל הדור, בשביל כל הצעירים. ידע מחבל ביהודה ושומרון, שאם הוא מגיע להרוג יהודים, אחת הדין שלו, מוות, תלייה. אתה יודע מה מדהים? הם מפחדים בבתי הכלא, בעזה, ברשות. פתאום החמאס התחיל להגיד, פוגעים לנו בזכויות אזרח, אחלה פגיעה. הוא נפגע בהם, נוציא אותם להורג. מוות למחבלים. עשינו היסטוריה.
That's the type of people that you're dealing with. That's Itamar Ben-Gvir, who's a terrorist. He had multiple convictions. Ben-Gvir had multiple. Do people know that he's a convicted terrorist? How many of you know that Ben-Gvir is a terrorist? I'll just give you a list of his charge. Terrorist convictions. Here's it here. He has been convicted of at least 8 criminal offenses, including supporting a terrorist organization and incitement to racism. He's been indicted more than 50 times, charged throughout his career as a far-right activist. Most of the charges were dismissed. His primary terrorism-related convictions stem from his involvement with the Kach movement, an extremist group founded by Rabbi Meir Kahane that is officially designated as a terrorist organization by both Israel and the United States. In 2007-2008, he was convicted of expressing solidarity with the Kach movement and possessing propaganda materials. In 2007-2008, the conviction followed an incident where he held signs regarding Arabs out, expel the Arab enemy after Palestine attacking Jerusalem. His convictions include participating in illegal assemblies and riots, interfering with, obstructing, and assaulting a public police officer, defacing property, and insulting a public servant. Due to his extreme far-right activities, the Israeli Defense Force denied him the opportunity to serve in the military. He was even prevented from serving in the military. Can you believe that? He was even prevented from serving in the military. This is the type of people that we are basically dealing with. These are the 2 individuals that we are dealing with. Let the people know this is a Guardian report that shows us who these people are, what they're about, and this is the other individual that's with him, equally insane. And by the way, this is how the entire Israeli administration exists. Here we are. Who are Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir, the Israeli ministers facing sanctions? This was, I think, this was from last year, I think. Smotrich is a Messianic settler who was born in the occupied Golan Heights. He now lives in occupied West Bank and has repeatedly called for settlers to return to Gaza. He believes Jews have a divine right to all land that made up biblical Israel, a commitment to expanding the area controlled by Jewish Israelis, both in de facto terms and through legal annexation, runs through his personal and political life. 2007, he was arrested by Shin Bet security services about his role in protest of Israel's plan to withdraw from Gaza. He didn't want them to withdraw. Smotrich is a self-declared fascist homophobe, but his son is gay. I think his son is homosexual. Imagine that. Ben-Gvir embraced extremism so young that Israel's domestic security forces barred him from serving the country as a teenager. That's how extreme he was. That's how extreme he was. They didn't even want him to serve in the IDF. Yet today he's basically deciding policy, and he's the guy behind the death penalty. For years, his living room was decorated with a portrait of the mass murderer Baruch Goldstein, who gunned down 29 Palestinians in the Hebron Mosque in 1994. Goldstein, like Ben-Gvir, was an admirer of the extremist Rabbi Meir Kahane. Having spent most of his life on Israel's political fringe, Ben-Gvir was given the security portfolio when he joined Netanyahu's government. He now controls the police force that arrested him and the jails where he was once held. Imagine that. These are the people running the show. These are the people running the show. This is the guy. This is his background. And they're keeping him. They are approaching courts. High Court rejects petition to disqualify far-right as minister. So in 25th panel, 3 judges find that despite the leader's check appointment, his appointment in the cabinet is not unreasonable in the extreme. He's not unreasonable. This is totally acceptable. This is the person that is totally fine. And he's totally allowed to do what he wants to do. So this is the individual that we've got. And these are the people that are basically running the show that we need to obviously speak out against.
I just want to also add, Brother Yusuf, as we're just getting through breaking news, the first phase of the in-person ceasefire talks between the United States and Iran just concluded in Pakistan. Why do you think Israel is not involved in these peace talks? And why have they been? Do you think the USA have realized that they've been duped into this conflict? Why do you think this? How come Israel is not involved in this mediation? Because they are the third party. Without them, I don't think you. Go ahead.
No. It's not that America realizes that they duped. They knew all along. They knew from if you look at the New York Times report, it was quite clear that Trump, I don't know what the influence was, but he clearly knew that he was being taken for a ride. But Netanyahu was controlling him. His own officials, even someone like Marco Rubio, stated they're not going to be regime change. Israel did not engage in the ceasefire. They don't have no interest in engaging the ceasefire because they want total chaos. Because if they have a ceasefire, then they have to stop their bombings and stop their killings of civilians in Lebanon. So they have to continue to target Hezbollah to achieve victory, to apparently protect what they deem to be Israeli sovereignty, and apparently avoid empowering their so-called adversaries. From their perspective, but they can't attack Iran. They can't attack Iran single-handedly. That's why they will not strike Iran now. They will engage, because if they strike Iran, they know they will do it alone. And the United States will not be there for them right now. And it's unlikely that they will come back. Therefore, their next go-to target is Lebanon. And the next go-to target is obviously the continuation in Gaza. So the war goals remain unfulfilled. So why would they want to back their particular ceasefire if they don't want if their goals and ambitions are not basically fulfilled? Why would they do that? It goes against them. So from their perspective, they cannot attack Iran because the United States is not there, but nothing stops them from attacking Lebanon. And then to justify that, the ongoing attacks on Lebanon, because Lebanon doesn't have a powerful military to fight back, the United States gives them the go-ahead, and it tells them that the ceasefire only applies to direct hostilities with Iran. But in contrast, the Iran and Pakistani mediators have asserted that the deal included all regional fronts, especially Lebanon and Hezbollah. Netanyahu stated, on the other hand, that their campaign in Lebanon has to continue. But it's quite clear that the reason they can attack Lebanon is because they have the power to do that. And Lebanon is weak. They do not have the power to single-handedly take over Iran or strike Iran. They will need the United States support for that. So they cannot attack Iran single-handedly. So they choose to continue with Lebanon because it's weak. But because Lebanon cannot fight back and attack Israel, the United States leaves Israel to do its own war. If Israel were to attack, for example, Yemen or Qatar as an example, they will get a slap on the wrist. There may be some sort of reaction from Trump, but effectively, so long as there's no potential threat to Israel's sovereignty, the United States will not get involved. So it's not a question of the United States realizing that they've been fooled. They know all along. They've been controlled. In February at the Situation Room. Netanyahu knew what was happening.
From your perspective, I know the war is still underway, or there's a so-called 2-week ceasefire. Who has the upper hand out of all this? Who still has the upper hand?
I believe Iran. I believe if you look at the upper hand in all of this, Iran has strategically come out more powerful. Iran has got the upper hand. I mean, now obviously, when you talk about upper hand, there's different ways of looking at it. But in terms of being more powerful, having economic control over the Gulf region and the Strait of Hormuz, Iran has an upper hand. The United States has been left without having achieved any of its goals. None of its goals are achieved. Regime change, that's not achieved. The enriched uranium that they want to destroy, that's not achieved. They are even lying that there has been a regime change. They are even lying that Iran has agreed to give them to hand over the enriched uranium. Do you know that? They've even lied. Caroline Levitt, I couldn't believe it, but Caroline Levitt stated, where's it here? There was a clip I saw just a few days ago where Caroline Levitt stated that Iran has basically agreed to hand over. Caroline Levitt, Iran agrees to hand over uranium. I mean, how you can't? These are people that are totally defeated. These are people that are totally defeated. Totally defeated. This was a.
I agree with that. I agree that because right now reports are coming out from the so-called agreed ceasefire that Iranian assets have been released. So basically, the delegation have told Al Jazeera talks have took place and they've come to an end, and the US is to release frozen Iranian assets. So I don't know what the assets are, but it goes to show, I think you're correct. I think when it comes to economical strangulation on the Western world, Iran has got the upper hand. No doubt about that.
Look at this clip. Look at this line. I don't know what she's up to. Look at what she says. Listen to this. Look at what she says.
Or is this an expectation that the president has that he would have to send in ground troops in order to do that?
This is on the top of the priority list for the president and his negotiating team as they head into this next round of discussions. And as I said in my opener, that is a red line that the president is not going to back away from. And he's committed to ensuring that takes place. We hope it will be through diplomacy.
Have they given any indication that they would turn it over?
They have.
They have.
Yes.
Have they given an indication that they would turn over? Why would they want to do that? And they're lying. She's clearly lying. I mean, they are so defeated. They're claiming regime change. They're claiming Iran has will hand over its enriched uranium for takeover by the United States. None of what they've gone about has been achieved. Nothing. They've lost dismally. They've certainly destroyed people's lives. They've killed civilians. This is what they do. That's not a win. When you murder civilians, that's not a win.
Yeah, but
so this is the reality of the situation.
From this conflict, can you take, is the world a safer place? Is the world a safer place?
Of course not. Of course not. But the problem is it's not Iran that's making the world an unsafe place. It's Israel and the United States that's making the world an unsafe place. But what we do now know also is that the world has seen that the United States militarily is not as powerful as it was 20 years ago. Nowhere as powerful. You remember the shock and awe campaign that they engaged in all those years ago? We heard about. They depleted. They don't have the capacity. They don't have the military power. They don't have the boots on the ground for a kind of an Iraq-style invasion. They know it will cripple them entirely. The economy is crumbling. Their price of food and oil is rising sky high. Their economy is crashing. The United States is in a worse position economically than it's ever been before. They've got a lunatic running the show. The guy's absolutely insane, transactional. He was in it for personal interest. His own base is speaking out against him. Those people that supported him, like Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, nutters like Alex Jones, Megyn Kelly, these were the people that brought him up. They've turned against him completely. So what he's done is now he's got himself surrounded by groups of yes men who will just basically do to his bidding, and those that are not there, he fires them. So Pam Bondi did a bad job with regards to the Epstein files. Fired her. The other one, Kristi Noem with regards to ICE, fired her. She couldn't defend ICE's actions, fired her. So this is a guy that is desperate. He's insane. No person who is a president, let alone leader of a household. I mean, you won't talk and send out tweets like that. This is unprecedented. No president in living memory.
I don't know. Just towards the end of the show, I don't know if it's possible to show the audience Trump's wife coming up and distancing herself.
Let's go to that. Let's go to what she's saying.
Oops, Brother Yusuf. I think Brother Yusuf has just dropped down. Maybe he's pressed the wrong button. But guys, if you like the show, please like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm also on TikTok on the same name as COVFF channel, Abu Shuaib. So please go and check me out on TikTok. Just recently, I just literally came back from giving dawah in the Coventry City Centre. So look out for some upcoming clips to be posted on my YouTube channel. And finally, from me, until Yusuf comes back, is that here in Coventry, I'll be standing as a candidate for the Workers' Party of Britain here in the Folesville area of Coventry. So if there's anybody out there who is listening from the city of Coventry and resides in Folesville, look out for me walking around canvassing and so forth. We're just waiting for Brother Yusuf to return, and hopefully we can continue the live stream. If there's any questions or any comments, please type them in the chat. And if there's anybody who wants to come on, you're most welcome to come on. I'll put the link in the chat. But of course, previously we had some crazy people joining us, so just got to be careful. Brother Yusuf is back. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Yusuf. What happened?
I don't know what happened. I may have gone off for some reason. I don't know whether it was kicked off or anything like that. Let me just
Maybe
see.
you pressed the wrong button or something.
It's possible.
Also, due to this situation, I just want to let the audience know myself and Brother Yusuf have been restricted with these podcasts and live. Some of my podcasts and Brother Yusuf's podcasts have just seemed to disappear from our channel. So I don't know what's going on. I don't know who's controlling our YouTube channel. It just seemed like we do some podcasts regarding Palestine or topics like this. And then after a short while, they seem to get removed. So, let me just, this is a very interesting
This is
clip.
it, yeah. Let's just see
Why
a clip.
do you think she done this, Brother Yusuf? I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
I haven't actually listened to the whole thing. I just saw clips. I never listened to the entire thing, by the way. I'll be listening to it for the first time. But I can only assume is that because of, she's got a checkered past herself. She was a naked model. She could have been passed around working as a prostitute. I don't know, high-end prostitute. But Trump's clear implications, being implicated in the Trump files, has kind of led her to possibly anticipating that something negative exists about her. And hence she needs to come out to prevent that possible speculation that may happen. That's the only reason I can see. But it's pretty bizarre.
I would also add, Yusuf, I actually think she knows Trump is drowning, and it's time for her to jump ship. I think that's also...
and that's possibly one of the reasons as well, yeah. Let's just play this. Very odd.
The lies linking me
Very
with the disgraceful Jeffrey Epstein
Can you hear?
need to end today. The individuals lying about me are devoid of ethical standards, humility, and respect. I do not object to their ignorance, but rather I reject their mean-spirited attempts to defame my reputation. I never been friends with Epstein. Donald and I were invited to the same parties as Epstein from time to time, since overlapping in social circles is common in New York City and Palm Beach. To be clear, I never had a relationship with Epstein or his accomplice, Maxwell. My email reply to Maxwell cannot be categorized as anything more than casual correspondence. My polite reply to her email doesn't amount to anything more than a trivial note. I am not Epstein's victim. Epstein did not introduce me to Donald Trump. I met my husband by chance at a New York City party in 1998. This initial encounter with my husband is documented in detail in my book, Melania. The first time I crossed paths with Epstein was in the year 2000 at an event Donald and I attended together. At the time, I had never met Epstein and had no knowledge of his criminal undertakings. numerous fake images and statements about Epstein and me have been circulating on social media for years now. Be cautious about what you believe. These images and stories are completely false. I'm not a witness or a named witness in connection with any of Epstein's crimes. My name has never appeared in court documents, depositions, victim statements, or FBI interviews surrounding the Epstein matter. I have never had any knowledge of Epstein abuse of his victims. I was never involved in any capacity. I was not a participant, was never on Epstein's plane, and never visited his private island. I have never been legally accused or convinced of a crime in connection with Epstein's sex trafficking, abuse of minors, and other repulsive behavior. The false smears about me from mean-spirited and politically motivated individuals and entities looking to cause damage to my good name, to gain financially and climb politically, must stop. My attorneys and I have fought these unfounded and baseless lies with success and will continue to maintain my sound reputation without hesitation. To date, several individuals and companies have been legally obligated to publicly apologize and retract their lies about me, such as Daily Beast, James Carville, and HarperCollins, UK.
So that basically it. I don't know if you want to take away anything from that, but effectively what she's saying is that she was not a pimp. Epstein was not a pimp, and due to Epstein's relationship with Trump, he wasn't pumped out. She wasn't pumped out to him. That's basically all it amounts to, and basically the fact that Trump had close lines with the Epstein and was seen to be having sex now with minor children and raping children. Effectively, she's trying to anticipate that and say, look, this had nothing to do with her. She was not in any way involved in any of this, had nothing to do with this. And, people are obviously questioning. People are questioning why would she say this suddenly and all of a sudden at this particular point in time? They find it surprising.
Sorry, Yusuf, I actually think maybe she's got a heads up. I mean, as somebody has whispered in her ear, your husband's mentioned in the Epstein files of doing some very sick acts or whatever, committed some crimes. And my advice to you, hush, hush, is to come out with a statement which is written by your lawyers to distance yourself. And why do it now? Like you said, there's a conflict going on. There's peace talks or ceasefire talks happening. Why do it now? I actually feel she did it Trump without having any knowledge of what she was going to do. I don't know what you think about that.
No, I agree entirely. I mean, and the media is even reacting. Even the traditional media that basically would generally support MS Now and all these others, basically find that this is extremely odd. It's extremely odd that she would say this at this juncture. This was a clip from MS Now. Just play a small clip of this. Why did she say these things? It doesn't really make sense why she would say any of this. Here we are. Play this clip.
40 days since we've led this broadcast with news about Donald Trump's ties to Jeffrey Epstein, or for that matter, the Trump administration's refusal to release the Epstein files with any alacrity or consideration for the victims of sexual abuse and child sex trafficking. Melania Trump changed that today, seemingly on purpose. She summoned the White House press pool, and at 2:30 p.m. today, she said this.
The lies linking me with the disgraceful Jeffrey Epstein need to end today. They not reply to at the New York City party in 1998.
To be clear, none of those things, nothing about Melania Trump, was the Epstein headline that was dogging Donald Trump in the days immediately leading up to the start of the war he began with Iran. In those days, it was news of a woman who alleged sexual and physical assault by Donald Trump when she was a child. That story was all over the news, including in right-wing outlets. Importantly, it's a story that Donald Trump denies.
Did you see one of the articles there? Did you see one of the articles there? Key details of a 13-year-old Trump accuser's accounts are verified. 13-year-old victim. 13-year-old. This guy's a sick bastard. Sick satanic
all
bastard.
Over the news, including in right-wing outlets.
In connection.
Actually, he had no prior knowledge to the topic that Melania Trump, his wife, was going to be touching upon today in his statement. In her statement, he then repeated that he had to go. But before we hung up the phone, he said that she didn't know him, presumably referring to Jeffrey Epstein. This was a really remarkable statement that we heard from the First Lady. It was something that my colleague, Jake Traylor, when he pinged one of his White House sources, said that many people in the building.
What I find interesting, Yusuf, they seem to be wearing the same blouse. The news reporter and Melania are wearing the same type of jacket. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, I didn't notice that until you brought it to my attention.
That's strange.
I don't know if that's a coincidence or what, but I mean, they could have particular spin doctors, whatever the case is. So this is the type of people we are dealing with in relation to what's happening around the world.
Well, finally, I want to ask you regarding myself. I think recently you heard that I'll be standing in the city of Coventry, especially the area of Folesole, as a candidate for the Workers' Party of Britain, which is headed by George Galloway. What would you? What is your advice, and what do you say to myself putting myself forward? Some of the hurdles I might come across, and of course I might get some negative reactions or some positive reactions. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
You know, from firstly, I've known you now for about 2 years. Maybe how long have I known you? 3 years. 2023. We got to know each other from the beginning of 2023 when this genocide commenced, and we've kind of maintained a sort of a partnership with each other, doing these various programs. A lot of them have been removed. And all I can see is you have been and come across as a man of sincerity and a man of integrity and a man who basically is wanting to make change in your own community, in society at large, both within and indeed externally. And so I would urge the public out there, members of the community, religious leaders, regardless of whatever denomination or background you come from, to support Brother Muhammad Abu Shuraib to the hilt. If I was there in the United Kingdom, certainly I won't have the ability to vote at this juncture, but if I was there, I would certainly vote and support a man like him. We need men like him, and it's part of the Islamic imperative to get involved in political issues. Islam is not Islam. You know, when Allah tells you in the Quran that I'm going to create a vicegerent on earth, a khalifa, a vicegerent, he's not talking about hypothetically the Khulafa Rashidin, or he's not talking about the later corrupt caliphs of the Ottoman period or the Abbasid period or any of that. He's talking about all of us. He's talking about each and every single human being as a vicegerent. And you can be a vicegerent in many ways, at the grassroots levels, at an activist level, at a media level, at a political level. And you need to ask yourself, how can we make change in society? Because at the end of the day, the emphasis in Islam, the emphasis in the Quran is one of justice. Truth, justice as a lived reality for all of people, for all of humanity. You know, the Quran states in Surah Nisa, stand up for justice, even if it is against your next of kin. So how do you engage in that? If you have the ability to basically make some form of meaningful change at a political level, at a decision-making level, of course, do that if you can do that. Obviously, we're not going to ask you to become compromised in any way, shape, or form. But if you can make changes at a political level within the existing structures that exist, by all means do that. and vote and support Brother Muhammad. Those of you who are against him, even amongst the Muslims, well, certainly amongst the Zionists, obviously we can understand that. But those Muslims who are against him or speak out against him, you should be ashamed of yourselves. You should be ashamed of yourselves because your actions are antithetical to everything that the Quran mentions. You are in fact going against the Quran if a Muslim brother goes out there and wants to make meaningful change in society and wants to do it at the political level. That's what Islam does. That's what Islam did from inception. When Islam started off, it wasn't a quietist movement. Obviously, there was an evolution in terms of its political process that happened in Mecca, that happened in Medina. The relationship that the Prophet and his companions, peace be upon them, engaged with the atheistic aristocrats of Mecca during the Meccan period was different from their relationship that they engaged during the Medina period. It was totally different. Of course, the message was the same, but the means of engagement differed. And so from the perspective of a Muslim, for you to sit back and just do nothing and then just complain and believe that Jesus or Isa is going to come back and change the situation, or the Mahdi is going to come, you are living in a fool's paradise in a dreamland, and you need to be condemned for your activities. If he can change Coventry, make it more ethically appropriate, ethically beneficial to the rest of society, that is very much part and parcel of the Islamic imperative. And that's in fact what the Quran calls us to be. Become meaningful contributors to society, and not just individuals who maintain a level of quiescence and sit behind and want to sit with a rosary bead and believe that somehow or the other, by miraculous means, Allah is going to change the conditions of you. What does the Quran state? Allah does not change the conditions of a people unless they themselves change society. This is something from the Quran. I want to share that particular verse, that Allah will not change. What's the surah? I don't have the surah offhand. Will not change the condition of a person unless it's in Surah Rad. Surah Rad, chapter 13, verse 11. And I want all of you to basically take this, open up the Quran in Surah Rad, chapter 13, verse 11. It says, Inna Allah la yughayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim. Indeed, Allah will never change the people's state of affairs or the conditions of a people until they themselves change their own conditions or their own state and their own faith, their own self. يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ nafs. And if it is Allah's will to torment a people, it can never be averted, nor will they find a protector other than Him. So you leave your trust in Allah. You leave your trust in Allah. But justice in the Quran is something that we have to actualize as Muslim believers. We have to actualize as Muslim believers in our community, in our society. Not just something as something that you recite, but something that you actually engage in. Something that you need to deal with. Something that you need to shape society. It's not merely a legal concept. It's not merely something that you read. It's fundamental, mandatory, spiritual obligation upon Muslim believers, central to their role as the Khilafah on earth, as a custodian. And actualizing justice can obviously mean you engage in justice on a personal level, on a social level, on a legal level, on an economic level, on a political level. How do you do that if you don't engage the political system? How do you do that? How do you do that? Why is it that the vast majority of people that have been arrested in London in these protests and support for Palestine action. And by the way, I'm a South African, and I'll come to the United Kingdom and I'll say openly, I don't know about not Brother Muhammad, I don't want to get him into trouble. Myself, I support Palestine action to the hilt. But why is it that those people who are basically being arrested are non-Muslims? Majority of them are non-Muslims. Old people, elderly, Palestinian activists, some of them are just secular. Why are the Muslim da'is not there? Where are all these people out there with your multi-million subscriber channels? Why are you not there? Why is it that those who are talking about supporting the vulnerable and the marginalized and are in fact standing on the side of the oppressed against the oppressors are the leftists, are those on the left, those on the social activists, those who are not necessarily Muslims? If justice is required from those in power, and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam stated that a just leader is amongst the most beloved to Allah, what does one do then with an unjust leader, with an unjust society, with unjust rules? You need to make change. And if Brother Muhammad is making that change, then we need to support him. Islamic justice is not just limited to Muslims. From the Quranic point of view, it applies to all people, regardless of their faith, regardless of their background, regardless of their status. The Prophet Muhammad even demonstrated that even in legal disputes with non-Muslims, a Muslim leader must adhere to strict fairness, even if it means losing the case. So in essence, justice for a Muslim is an act of ibadah. It's intended to reflect the divine attribution of justice on earth. You know, when the Prophet says, imbue thyself with divine attributes, one of the attributes of Allah is justice. You know, I'm not basically trying to stretch this when I say this, but, you know, in actually what Brother Muhammad is doing at one level can be demonstrably described as an act of ibadah. And if you are stopping him from engaging in an act of ibadah where he wants to make meaningful change in society, then you who are condemning him or attacking him, if you're a Muslim, are engaging in an act of sin. If a Muslim stops another Muslim from engaging in an act of ibadah, then he engages in sin. This is a sacred duty of each and every single Muslim, Islam and social justice. And if Brother Muhammad can do this by joining forces with the Workers' Party, all strength, all credence, and all support goes to him. And I say this as a South African, someone that is not part of this political system in the United Kingdom, which is corrupt to the core. And here you have a party that wants to make that meaningful change, wants to tackle the right-wing, far-right extremists that are running the show, wants to take over the society with this white supremacism that's happening. We need to support Brother Muhammad. So those will be my parting words to Muhammad. And I wish you well in your journey. And of course, your journey will be grounded in Quranic dictates and with the Quranic prophet ethos and the prophetic paradigm. And certainly you will go far. And inshallah, your Workers' Party will certainly make some form of meaningful change in community. So, and of course, hopefully nationally. And so I support you and I urge the brothers to support you as well.
Thank you so much for those kind words, Brother Yusuf. I really appreciate it. Once again, brothers and sisters, yeah, I'll be standing as a candidate for the Workers' Party here in Coventry in a particular area called Folds Hill. So if you are in the area of Folds Hill, you'll be entitled to vote in May. So look out for my name on the ballot box and don't forget the ticket. Of course, I'll be canvassing over the next couple of days, going around Foldsall, interacting with people. And so far, I've had a very positive response by the community. But unfortunately, there is one or two individuals who send me some uncomfortable DMs or text messages. But yeah, you know, I want to make a change to the city of Coventry. And this is my first step. So please, brothers and sisters, keep me in your dua and make me victorious in May. And throughout my journey as a candidate for the Workers' Party, I will be posting small clips of me canvassing with other people. So stay tuned for that. And also, I'll be uploading some interesting discussions that I just had here in Coventry on the Dawah store. And so I'll be uploading them pretty shortly. Brother Yusuf, once again, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate your time. It's been a beautiful journey, and long may it continue. Jazakallah khair. Final question to you, Brother Yusuf. How do you feel this ceasefire, or after the ceasefire ends, what can you see the outcome? What would you take from all of this as a neutral? That who has really benefited from this conflict?
Well, from what I can see, the ceasefire has caused Donald Trump to be totally and utterly humiliated. Totally and utterly humiliated. According to the Iranian media, is already claiming that this is nothing more than a humiliating retreat from his previous anti-Iran rhetoric, and effectively, they are claiming victory. Now, Trump is claiming victory, but the point being made is that his own side knows that this is not a victory. His own side now disbelieves him. They know that there's been no regime change. And so this perception of humiliation that he's now experiencing is now also being driven by alternative media outlets which supported him in the first instance. They're framing this kind of, because he's talking on the one hand of genocide and destroying everything in desperation and demanding open the effing straits, and then suddenly, hey, we got a ceasefire. There's an abrupt diplomatic pivot. This is a sign of weakness or retreat on his side. So he comes out badly. He comes out completely badly in relation to this. I think Iran has it's clearly shown that the people of Iran still haven't turned up against their government. The Iranian people haven't changed in regards to the animosity against the individuals that are running the show in Israel and against the United States. I think Iran should have come out more earlier in terms of its strikes against Iran during the height of against Israel during the heights of the genocide in Gaza, which it didn't do. It was using its proxies. It should have. That was one of my criticism against Iran. Why didn't it not strike Israel during the height of the Israeli genocide and only now? But nonetheless,
Brother Yusuf, I actually think they were depleting the so-called Iron Dome. As we know, that the cost aspects of the Iron Dome, it goes into the millions. As for these drones, they're maybe a couple of $100 to produce and to make. So I actually think they realized that David Sling and the Patriot missiles and the Iron Dome is failing now. So they're running out of money. Yeah,
I think that is totally correct. But I think amongst our Muslims, we need to also have unity. I want to make a point, and again, that's another topic, but I want to end with this. The Iranian Revolution of '79, it was an aberration to Shiite theology. And a lot of people have even told me this, and a lot of people who are aware of it know it's an aberration. You see, in Shia theology and Shiite ideology, they've never had a system where revolution was intrinsic. Shiism per se, as it stands, is a very quietist movement. It's a movement that's why there's this nutcase Shia fanatic by the name of who challenged my friend Adnan Rashid to a debate. His name is Allah Yari, some funny character, Hassan Allah Yari, or one of these guys from the UK. But these are hardcore Shia fanatics. But a lot of these guys never supported the revolution because the revolution basically, or what underpinned the revolution, was other movements like Ikhwan al-Muslimin in Egypt, the Muslim Brotherhood, and anyone who knows Islamic history of the 20th century will tell you that, or Jamaat-e-Islami. So traditional Shiism focused highly on personal pieties, and they believed in this coming of the Mahdi, the hidden Imam, and all that kind of nonsense. But actual revolution and developing the system of political change based on the idea of Vilayat-e-Faqih, that was something totally new. And that's why you had when the revolution first happened, a lot of Sunnis basically supported the revolution because of the fact that it moved away, it veered away from the traditional Shiite theology. it veered away in the sense that Khomeini stated we need to now have this degree of unity. Even Khamenei, for example, he shut down in 2007 that shrine where there was this assassination of Hazrat Umar, Abu Lula, who assassinated Hazrat Umar. They shut it down officially because they knew that it would play out negatively against those Sunnis who would be opposed to Iran on ideological grounds. So the revolution, people need to know that the revolution, the movement, the revolution, what you have today, of course, there's lots of flaws, and the revolution regards, civil liberties, human rights violations, all of that was happening. None of the Gulf states, by the way, have human rights, so it's a stupid argument. But the revolution per se was not something intrinsic in Shiite theology. Shiite theology, and even today in Qom, there are many hardline Shiites that are opposed to the revolution because they believe you shouldn't get involved in politics. They hold the idea that the political domain of the leadership of the Shah should never have been tampered with, and so they could keep to their own Shiite theology. And so what happened in Iran was totally revolutionary. It moved away from Shiite theology and it embraced a lot of the Sunni movements like the Ikhwan al-Muslimin and Jamaat-e-Islami. That's why Hamas was so close with the Iranian leadership. And one of the reasons people couldn't understand was that Hamas is also an offshoot of the Ikhwan al-Muslimin, which is a Sunni movement in Egypt, the Egyptian Islamic Brotherhood. And the Egyptian Brotherhood was a kind of a forerunner or one of the influences to the revolution in 79. If I had a choice as one of the best leaders to have ruled Iran, I would have gone with a person like Ali Shariati, brilliant thinker, not in any way a sectarian. And he was, of course, coming from the Shiite background, but he was not sectarian in the Shiite sense. Shariati would have been ideal. But this is why the argument I'm bringing out, and I'm bringing this out purely because of the fact that many people believe that the revolution is something intrinsic in Shiite theology. It's not. It never was. Those who make the claim clearly don't know the history. The revolution utilized modern Shiite language, and it interpreted the story of Imam Hussein, and what ideologically pushed it was, for example, the thoughts of people like Sayyid Qutb, Maulana Maududi, Hassan al-Banna. These were the individuals that were instrumental in merging the whole concept of social justice in Iran that basically sparked the revolt. Now, what obviously it ended up with the Iranian Revolution, there's lots of criticisms against it. But people like Khamenei and even Khomeini to an extent were not sectarian Shiites. And I think people need to obviously be aware of that. And to the extent that they challenged American hegemony, that is something which we need to kind of support and back. And so that's why I'm saying in times like this, where you've got alternatives to the American imperial domination, it is critical and intrinsic that people like us, of course, I wouldn't say, support the excesses of the Iranian regime, but support them in the sense of challenging Israeli domination and, of course, U.S. imperial ambitions in the Middle East. And clearly, in all of this, Iran has come out strategically stronger. The United States has walked away. Donald Trump with these balls even smaller than what it was before the war, and he's run away. And I mark my words, after 2 weeks, it's unlikely that Trump's going to come back. He's going to forget about this. He moves on. He's got an attention deficit disorder. He doesn't have much credence anymore within his own MAGA movement. Just watch Piers Morgan every day. Ex-MAGA movement. If Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was a Trump fanatic, is coming out now and condemning him, what does it tell you about the MAGA movement? Totally collapsed. So it's only a few yes men and a few white supremacist extremists that are backing him, but he's finished. His political career is damaged. He's finished. He's probably going to lose the midterm elections completely. And he's got, I think, 2 or 3 years left, and then he's gone. He's created a total disaster. He's a man that was there for his personal interests. Had he had a third term, it's unlikely he would have done this reckless actions. He knows what he's doing. He's controlled by the Israelis. He's got no way out. He knew he was deluded. His own people told him that you are going to lose by doing what you're doing. He nonetheless went ahead, and now he's just basically going to leave totally humiliated and destroyed. And this, in a sense, is a collapse of global American empire. You can see how weak they've come out weaker. Question is, Has America come out of this war stronger or weaker? Has Israel come out of this war stronger or weaker? Did Iran control the Straits of Hormuz before the war? No. Did Iran decide which ships go through the Strait of Hormuz before this war? No. Does it now? Yes. Does Iran charge tariffs? Yes. Has it caused the price of oil to spike tenfold in the United States? Yes. Has it impacted the US economy? Yes. Has it caused the price of homemade items and goods has it caused the economy in the United States to collapse? Yes. So this is the reality of the situation. And I think we're going to basically see new times. The world's going to be obviously more dangerous. The world hasn't changed. Lebanon, we need to pray for our brothers and sisters in Lebanon. They're being pounded by the hour by the satanic Israeli regime. And I think Iran should continue strikes against Israel. They should not stop. They should continue.
That was a beautiful summary, Yusuf. I really appreciate that. Once again, brothers and sisters, thank you for joining us here on COVFF channel, and those brothers and sisters who are watching us on the South African Debate Initiative, which is run by Brother Yusuf on YouTube. Please go there, like, share, and subscribe. As I previously mentioned, I'm going to just remind the audience that myself and Brother Yusuf have been severely restricted with our content. You can tell by the figures how many people watch them. Some of our clips have been taken down without even us knowing that our videos have been taken down. I actually appealed, I think about a couple of weeks ago, to YouTube to raise one of mine back up again, and alhamdulillah, within an hour or so, it was back up and running. So, guys, please like, subscribe, and share to myself and Brother Yusuf's YouTube channel. And you can also find me now on TikTok on the same name as COVFF channel, Abu Shuaib. Once again, thank you, brothers and sisters, for joining in. Brother Yusuf, Jazakallah khair. May Allah bless you, protect you, preserve you. Jazakallah khair. This is your brother Muhammad, and of course, my brother Yusuf Ismail. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.